Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiator. So a quick follow-up to my Dane Axe video. And first of all, thanks for watching that, and thanks for watching this video as well. And I was inundated and really surprised by how many offers I got to make a Dane Axe. In fact, so many that I kind of still I haven't really decided what to do about it. Because if 50 people, I won't say there's 50, but there's quite a lot. If let's say 20 people, and there probably are about 20 to 30, if 20 to 30 people offer to make you a Dane Axe, what do? You can't say yes to all of them, because you don't want 20 or 30 people to go to all that effort to make 20 or 30 Dane Axes, which you can't possibly keep. So anyway, I'm thinking about this. I've got all sorts of ideas, but I'm going to follow up with that in another video. But for the time being, there's a handful of people I'm talking to about possibly progressing this and taking this forward. So thank you so much for that. I also want to specify one particular thing. So a lot of people very kindly underneath that video and also on Facebook recommended specific companies or smiths. And so I have to be blunt. So one of the things that I skirted around, I kind of alluded to it in my video, is that lots of people are making Dane Axes that aren't at all like Dane Axes. So the problem is, there are two fundamental problems. Okay, number one, I'm looking for an axe with a reinforced edge. There are some companies making actually really good, really nice axes with a good weight and good distal taper and everything else, but without a reinforced edge. Now, it's not to say that some originals didn't have reinforced edges. As you saw from my Museum of London clips, some of the originals just within that one assemblage don't have reinforced edges. It seems to be about 50-50 split. So some of the Dane Axes have a reinforced edge, some of them have a thin edge. And as I mentioned in my previous video, this might indicate something to do with the usage of those axes. It might be personal preference. It might be, some people asked if it was to do with wealth. I'm more dubious about that, because I think if you can afford a large axe, then you can afford a reinforced edge, probably. But anyway, we don't really know. That's, to cut a long story short, we don't know why some have reinforced edges and some don't. I think it's probably to do with personal preference in regards to the use of axes and who you're likely to be hitting with them. So that's the first thing. The first thing is that lots of companies and people out there are making axes which don't have reinforced edges, and I'm personally looking for one with a reinforced edge. Secondly, and this is the slightly more sensitive bit, I actually know lots of makers out there making Dane Axes, but I don't consider them to be close at all to the originals, and the reason being that they're too thick and too heavy. And so quite simply, a lot of people making things like Dane Axes are making blunt reenactment weapons. And blunt reenactment weapons, just like with swords, it's the same with axes, are really different to the real sharp replicas. And frankly, a lot of people making blunt reenactment weapons haven't been and studied the originals in museums or collections. And so they're just making it from a picture in a book. And the absolute most common error to make with axes is to make them over heavy. It's true of swords as well. It's true of all weapons, basically. And the one particular thing about the Dane Axes that I have looked at up close, not just in the Museum of London, also the one in the British Museum, and elsewhere, is that they are thin. They are thin and light. And yes, they're very big, so I'm not saying that they're necessarily light in pure terms, but for their size, they're very light. They're lighter than most people think they're going to be. It's not like a wood chopping axe or a hand hatchet scaled up, which would be really heavy. But unfortunately, that's what lots of the reenactment makers do. All they do is they go, oh, well, I know how to make a one-handed axe, I'll just make it bigger. And no, that ends up with a completely different type of weapon to the so-called Dane Axe. The Housecarl or Dane Axe is a very, very specific tool, very clearly for a very specific job. It's a very thin, very flared, very wide, but very thin and relatively to its size light blade. And it seems to me that they were absolutely focused, especially with the small socket and the very thin flat section and only reinforcing the edge where it needed to be. They were absolutely focused on trying to keep the weight of those axes down. So, and unfortunately, I don't think that all makers can do that. A lot of people mention Arms and Armour and the fact that Scalagrim has a Dane Axe. He absolutely does, and the Arms and Armour Dane Axe actually seems to be really good, but it doesn't have a reinforced edge, and that is the only reason. The A&A axe, I have to say, looks really good for what it is, but it has a non-reinforced edge, and I just happen to want a reinforced edge. Anyway, to conclude simply by saying thank you so much for all the really, really kind offers I've had from people. I hugely appreciate it, and massive respect to you. Hopefully some of you I can work with and we can do stuff, and I'm thinking about a way that maybe makers out there who want to make stuff and get noticed, maybe I can help them in some ways. Anyway, well, more will follow about that when I've worked out the logistical details, but thanks once again. Thanks for all your comments and all your suggestions, and I'm sure, absolutely certain in fact, that I will be talking about Housecarl or Dane Axes again in future videos. Cheers folks! Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. We have extra videos on Patreon, and you can follow us on Facebook.